Namatu Ratana Tayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And my respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening. Today is Wednesday, the 8th of July 2020. This is Ajahn Sujan from Varapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. And as usual, I'm here with you all, bringing you some of the stories and some of the insights on the different aspects of the Buddha's teachings. And so far, we've been focusing on the first discourse of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, and yesterday I have explained, just laying down what the suffering, the first noble truth is, and explained what are the sufferings. So today again I'm going to go into little detail on that particular topic, focusing on what the Buddha said about the suffering and how to deal with that in detail, and one after another, starting from the birth, which again Buddha mentioned in the first discourse of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, like Idang kopana bhikkhave dukkhang ariya satcham jatipi dukkha jarapi dukkha maranampi dukkhang soka parideva dukkha domanasupaya sapi dukkha appiyehi sampayokho dukkho piyehi vippayokho dukkho yang pichang nalabhati tampi dukkhang sankitena panchupadhana khandha dukkha. So this is the section from the first discourse that we are focusing on. And here in this discourse, this particular passage is talking or explaining about the suffering or the dukkha according to Buddhism. Okay? And here, the passage that I have read it out in Pali language, which is believed to be the language that this Buddha spoken, and this is the language that preserved the teachings of the Buddha. And here saying, Idhankopana bhikkhave dukkhang ariya satchang. The noble truth of suffering, monks, is this, right? Now here is saying noble truth. And here simply it's because noble truth, it's no one can deny, right? No one can deny that this is not the truth. Everyone, whether a Buddhist or any other religious believers, has to accept this without any condition, right? So that's why it's become a noble truth. Okay? And here, birth is suffering. And now, this can be a tricky one. A birth is suffering. And people may say, why this is suffering? And it's all talking about suffering and suffering. Buddhism is so boring and so pessimistic and so negative. And it's talking that from the birth, it's a suffering, it's a problem. And this way can cause a lot of other problems too. And that's why I will go through why birth is suffering. And further it says, that the aging is suffering, disease is suffering. Basically, aging and disease we can relate. We know this is suffering, without any trouble, without any question at all. So aging definitely will suffer as we gradually get old, right? And disease, obviously, it's suffering. And then the death, again, we know that this is a suffering. Doesn't matter what we're doing when with disease or a death, suffering. That's why people we have a fear of a death. So that's a suffering, right? And association with the unpleasant is suffering. Again, that is very, very common that we can see. Association with dislike people. Not only here, Buddha is not talking dislike people, but Buddha is simply talking about all sort of things, and we will go detail in the coming minutes. And a separation from the beloved is suffering. Sorry for this little interruption due to this charger, the electricity trouble continue on running out. Right, so I was talking that separation from someone who we like, again, it's very easy to see, particularly those who have lost their loved ones, always find very difficult to come to the terms, and especially like our parents when they passed away, it's really difficult to come to the terms, and there is a possibility of why, and how, not fair and those things. And again, here Buddha is not just talking about the relationship. He was talking further on, we will come later, and further saying not attaining what one desire is also suffering. And obviously this is also we can see, and particularly in the children, when they wish to want to get this or that, at that moment, and if they do not get it, there comes, it's not fair, I want this, I want that, and it's not fair, he's getting this, you're getting this, but I'm not getting any kind of this. And this is also known as suffering. But in brief, it says Sankitena Panchupadhana Khandha Dukkha, which means the grasping or clinging onto the 5 aggregate is the suffering. Okay? So this is the whole the teachings of the Buddha, talking the concept of the suffering in a detail, breaking into the small pieces. And there is a few years ago I saw a cartoon, and the cartoon says that one gentleman is lying on a bed in a hospital, in a hospital, and a nurse comes to visit, and this cartoon displays that the patient is thinking, oh, I do feel poorly, I hope that everything is going to be okay. And this is, I think, this is a normal feeling that we all have when we have this kind of a fear, the sufferings or the troubles. Like yesterday I was talking to one of the gentlemen who had a coronavirus and suffered greatly and isolated himself for 4 weeks, and he was saying that it's so difficult, and most importantly, it's like all the material things that he was always thinking, all the material gain and the wealth he was thinking at that time, all become empty, no value at all. And all he had was his own faith and confidence in the Buddha's teachings. And throughout this time, what he did was just listen the talks, listen the meditation talks and a practice of meditation, and always linking his spiritual values or spiritual connection with the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And gradually he said that he was gaining this comfort, and despite of a facing of this uncertainty, he was feeling the comfort through this reflection and listening the talks and listening this Ratana Sutta, which one of the suttas that Buddha introduced to overcome these pandemics. So he was saying that during that time, only refuge he could think of is his spiritual refuge. I think in one of my talks in previously, I have mentioned that there are 3 securities people normally look for. The one is the financial security, and the second is the social security, and the last is this spiritual security. And from this coronavirus, what I have seen from talking to the people, realized that they were so much into the financial security and finding the social security, so good environment. But end of the day, when he got this virus, he was more of like trying to find this spiritual security. So that's why at the time when we got sick, we will be all thinking of whether am I going to be okay. And then a nurse or a doctor comes and says, oh, there is a cure for it, you will be okay. And suddenly we cheers up, right? And even when we got feel sick, that time when doctors gave us a medicine saying that it will cure us, then basically our whole face lights up, right? It's like, did you say that is there a cure for this disease? And then when doctors or a nurse say yes, but if you take the medicine, right? So if you take the medicine here, and this medicine in accordance to the Buddha's teachings is basically the middle path, the Eightfold Noble Path. Now we will go on this Eightfold Noble Path later on, okay? But today, I just wanted to give this cartoon as a reflection to see that the disease are so terrible when we got it. But once we know that there is a cure for it, then we feel more happier. So here, according to Buddhism, a disease or the problem is basically lies on us by getting to be born in this samsara. And there is a cure is once we are practicing properly in accordance with the teachings, basically we will be able to liberate ourselves. And that cure or the medicine is the Eightfold Noble Path. Okay. Now, as I recited the verses here early on in this verse, basically Buddha was talking. There are 12 types of suffering. So as I said, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow is suffering, lamentation is suffering, physical pain is suffering, mental pain is suffering, despair or grief is suffering, and then this association with dislike, this association with the light is suffering, and association with the hate is suffering, and at the end, the grasping the five aggregate is suffering. So Buddha simply categorized into 12 types of suffering. Now comes to the dukkha. Why dukkha? So birth is dukkha. And again, this birth is dukkha. When we look at the Satipatthana Sutta, it is saying that in the Satipatthana Sutta, the reason behind we get it's dukkha. Basically, once we are born, we have to die, right? So there is 3 stages there: genesis, and the static or the development, and the dissolution. So that's why during the time of the birth we may not be suffering, but after we are born, then we have to feel the suffering, or we have to experience the suffering. So that's why there is no suffering at the time of the birth, but once we are born, then we have to come across with the physical and mental sufferings throughout the time of this existence. So as a result, in a whole, the word jati dukkha, but birth becomes the suffering, and which is again the cause for rest of so many other sufferings to follow. And here, once we are born, we cannot deny for this aging, right? So in the Satipatthana Sutta, Buddha said that if there is old age for all kinds of a being in whatever kind of existence, they're getting frail and decrepit. They're becoming grey and wrinkled, the running down of their lifespan, the deterioration of their sense faculties. So basically aging means that our the static moment of aggregate of a mind and a matter, or the physical and our mind getting like slowly fades away. And with this vitality, failing of a vitality and impairment of sense faculties and weakening of our health, and which we can experience quite well. As a result, this becomes the dukkha. And a marana, basically this whatever arises, it is subject to decay and death. So the vanishing and passing away all kinds of beings in whatever existence has arisen. So this integration and their disappearance and dying, their death and the completion of their lifespan, a dissolution of this five aggregate. So this basically mind and matter is known as the death. So destruction of this five aggregate is the death. Again, there are those who are grasping too much on their life, who would take their life as a mortal and never going to die. But however, it is not the case. Like in Chinese emperors, when they become emperors, they do not want to die. So as a result, they would do anything to keep their life expectancy increase. But end of the day, they have to go, they have to die. And similar to the Egyptian pharaohs and kings, once they become the king, they want to live forever. And as a result, these mummies tombs been created hoping for the eternity. But it's not the case that everyone has to follow. And once we have born, so the birth, decay and the death is the natural occurrence that we have to accept, and we will be going to die anyway. But this time we do have to enjoy, and this time of this what we have. That's why I normally call the birth we cannot deny because it's already done. The death is also we cannot deny, which is coming to be. Within this time is the time to enjoy, and this enjoyment need to be very skillful and wholesome, which not affecting one or another, but creating harmony, peace and compassion. And this way we are enjoying and knowing things as they truly are. But the very moment when we do not know, and then that generates the sorrow and lamentation, and it's simply because of wanting to have this or wanting to have that and not having that. With this we will feel this misfortune, that or unlucky, and that's how we feel grief and a sorrow and a mourning about it. So that's the another suffering known as the suffering, sorrow and lamentation. And lamenting again, crying over something, and which again it's very difficult to express when someone died, particularly if someone is very close related to us, and when they die, it's not easy not to cry because of our attachment or our grasping or our relationship with them, and that causes this lamenting arises, and that's also a form of a suffering. And again, whenever our body comes to contact with the different other things which we do not like, let's say we don't like cold, then that also generates suffering. And also we don't like to have a heat, too much heat, that also create the physical suffering too. And as a result, it generates the painful suffering, and this is how also brings the unpleasant sensations, and that also known as the suffering. In terms of the mental, again, and a mental grief or mental displeasure, grief basically not having. So in the Satipatthana it says that if there is amongst any kinds of a mental pain, any kinds of a mental unpleasantness, or any kind of painful or unpleasant sensation as a result of mental contact, so that's how we get this mental unpleasantness. And then again, a distress or a despair affected by various kinds of a loss and misfortunes that we come across. and this is also needs to be understood properly, and this is the suffering that we cannot deny. And obviously association with the hateful is suffering, like hearing displeasant songs or sounds that causes suffering, and seeing not untidy places, or unlike people appearing, again that causes suffering, or seeing something out there also not pleasant, then that's also causes suffering too. And similarly, someone who we like, again a separation also causes a suffering. And that basically we want to we want so-called, we don't want to get old, we don't want to get die, we don't want to be separation from our parents, and we don't want to see anything good go away, or anything that is good, like we are not able to see them, or we are not able to contact, we're not able to listen the good songs, then that also creates a suffering too. So he's saying, whatever and wherever one finds pleasant, agreeable, or a light object of a sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or of that mind, or whatever and whenever one finds that there is wishing or one's fortune, prosperity, and comfort of one's own security, then at that moment one does not come into contact of these, then create the suffering, right? So this is also, and then not getting what is one desires. Again, we don't want to get old, we don't want to having to die, we don't want to get sick, we don't want to be sorrow, we don't want to be lamenting, grief, pain, distress. These are the unpleasant things. We don't want to experience it, but unlikely, it will be there as long as we are alive. So that's why this is also known as a suffering that we cannot deny, but we have to experience it, right? So that's why this is also known as a suffering. And overall, when we look at these 11 sufferings and come to the conclusion, what we realize that they simply, as long as we have this body and a mind, and we are subject to experience the suffering. What all needed is, suffering is inevitable, that we cannot deny. What is important is the pain. So pain is our choice, and this choice is based on our own experiences. And then whenever things come to contact us in this body or a mind, that moment, it's up to us how to choose, isn't it? Like someone find very spicy food when they eat. One may find it very spicy, cannot eat. Another person find it very delicious. So spicy is a spice. An amount of spice is there, same amount, but our perception or the individual's perception to it as they experience are different. So that same with ourselves too. As long as we have these 5 aggregates remains, and things comes to contact with these 5 aggregates, and this is inevitable, we cannot deny these will come as a natural part of it. All what we can do is to react in which way. It's up to us. It's our choice to be pain or unpain, right? So this grasping onto these 5 aggregates become the prime part of understanding the concept of the dukkha. And once we have understood this dukkha properly, and we understand that this whole mass of 5 aggregate holding onto it, basically the real suffering, now we have to understand that as the part of the process. Once we understood these as a part and parcel, we brought together, we come with it, and we just simply need to choose which one we want to have it. The more we grasp onto ourselves, and then that brings more grasping onto the relationship, and with that again we become more attached to it, and then creates more suffering that we have to face on. But the teachings of the Buddha, that we all have to realize this, so known as parinyaya, means need to understand it. The once we have fully understood, then this all the sufferings become just a part of it, and it won't give us a pain, but it will give us opportunity to learn from it and get by. Okay, and then well, end of the day we will be able to be liberated ourselves. So I offer this for tonight's in detail about the concept of the suffering according to the Four Noble Truths, and how do we understand. And I refer it from the first discourse and as well as the Satipatthana discourse to give you the scriptural understanding of this suffering. I end here, and in a few moments time, we will have evening chanting and guided meditation. So you are most welcome to join with us for this chanting and guided meditation, or otherwise see you tomorrow for the talk at 6:30, continuous talk. So until then, good night and see you shortly. And thank you everyone for listening from locally and internationally. May the Buddha bless you. In a few minutes time, we'll see you shortly soon. Thank you.